So I'm Gavin, I work at Disco. We mostly work with custom app development and script development. And what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight is hacking the checkout. That was another title that Cal came up with. Unlike Jason, I did change the title of it to Responsibly Enhancing the Checkout because I think that probably more accurately describes what I'm going to talk about. So I'll talk a little bit about why you might want to customize the checkout. So this is probably, I should say up front, this is probably something that's more geared towards Shopify Plus merchants because that's where the checkout customization is available, but it's always a good thing to know about even if you are not a Plus partner or you're not working with Plus clients. If you're talking to your existing Plus clients and they want to know, okay, what are the sort of things I could do if I upgraded to Plus, this is one of the things that you can talk to them about. So we'll be talking about why, what sort of use cases there are. I'll walk through an example of a checkout customization that we've built for a client, and then I'll give you a quick overview of some of the technical implications or some of the techniques we've used, some of the gotchas, and I'll try and power through as well. We'll see how they go. So the first thing to talk about is about why the checkout is so restricted, why it's a Plus only thing. It's because it is kind of dangerous. The checkout is a really, really crucial part of any e-commerce store's flow. So being able to touch that or alter that in any way could have a really significant impact on merchants' conversions. I'm sure you guys have all worked with the myriad of third-party apps or come to the disaster when a client has been able to, or they've found the edit code button and the theme editor and they've caused chaos and something doesn't work anymore. And you look at their, it's painful. So locking that down, I think preventing that crucial flow is part of Shopify's logic for that. Even when you are on Shopify Plus, you don't just automatically get access to the checkout customizations. You need to enable it with help of your merchant success manager. And they'll give you a bit of a spiel about make sure you know what you're doing. And they'll also warn you that every 30 days or so, or from time to time, Shopify will upgrade the checkout, and you sort of need to be committing to supporting any customizations you make. So that's something to bear in mind and make sure that clients understand. The other major reason I think that it's locked down are security reasons. You know, we're talking about something that's involving payment details. So you can imagine if people can suddenly start customizing and changing things in that checkout flow, they're loading third-party scripts. There are things to think about with could someone be stealing credit card details or customer details and that sort of stuff. That's not great for customers, obviously. It's also not great for merchants because they don't want a reputation as the store that stole my credit card. But if you are in a position where you think, okay, maybe checkout customization is a good idea, there are, I guess, some good reasons and some bad reasons to be customizing checkout. What I'd consider the good reasons, over here on the left in green, so things like augmenting the user experience, so helping your customers get through the checkout faster, maybe using information that you have from some other form of information. So if they're logged in, obviously their addresses will pre-populate, but another really common example of that would be an autocomplete. So instead of having to type out your entire form, you might put an address autocomplete in the first line of the address bar, and that helps the customer get through the checkout quicker. If they don't have the autocomplete, then you're not, you have a fallback because they can just type out the stuff in full. So it's a layer sitting on top of the checkout that's helping people get through it faster. Another good reason for customizing the checkout is capturing necessary information. Now, so additional information that you need to complete an order. So the emphasis there is on necessary. You really don't want to be adding extra steps into the checkout if you can at all avoid it. So it really needs to be stuff that falls into the category of we don't have specific information before we enter the checkout, but we need it to finish an order. So a great example of that would be a click and collect shipment method. So you don't know what shipment or what click and collect options you might have available until they've entered their address. But once they've done that, you want to know what store they're going to be picking up from. So that would be the sort of thing that it makes sense to put in the checkout flow. They've clicked click and collect. And now I've got to pick which store I want to pick up from. Stuff that you really don't need to be picking up at that stage, stuff you can ask afterwards, after the sale. So on the thank you page, on the order confirmation page, in a follow-up email. So, you know, the stuff like subscribe to my newsletter, although that's in the Shopify checkout by default. like my Facebook page, all that sort of stuff, maybe an upsell. A lot of this stuff can be put after the checkout experience, so you really don't need to be putting it in the checkout flow. And then the final thing that a lot of Plus merchants will want to do, if they have a really strong brand identity, they want to make the checkout look more like their brand. So Shopify gives you a bit of an opportunity to customize that with their theme settings, Google fonts and that sort of thing. But a lot of merchants will have really customized brands. So if you want completely custom fonts, if you've got widgets like inputs and select drop downs in the rest of your theme, you want to replicate that in the checkout. So having a customized checkout can let you do that, and you get a consistent brand experience from A to B. On the flip side of that, I'll move over here. The downsides, I guess, that a lot of these are really the inverse of the positive reasons to be customizing the checkout. But anything that's really getting in the way of the default checkout experience, so removing fields, moving them around on a form, stuff where if you don't have a fallback, like if your JavaScript that's powering this custom checkout doesn't work and the customer can't check out still, even if it's a bit more painful for them, that's a really dangerous customization to make, because your JavaScript will break it sometimes. Sometimes Shopify will break your JavaScripts. It does happen. So you really need to be really robust. So anything that isn't is dangerous. Capturing unnecessary information, obviously the flip side of what I was just talking about. And then probably one of the big ones is changing the flow. So anything that you're trying to move the steps around, like trying to capture payment before you get your shipping information or something crazy like that. But probably the biggest thing that a lot of merchants complain about and want to change around in this is the mythical one-page checkout. I'm sure many of you have probably spoken to clients that are really keen on this idea of getting a one-page checkout on their store. Shopify breaks the checkout process into steps. We deal with that complaint or issue quite a lot, and so I have a link handy that you can all refer to. Again, slides will be available so you can get this. This is a case study from a client, or no, a client of ours, a company called Just Eat. They had a one-page checkout process. They changed to a 4-step checkout process. That's all they did. And they got 2 million orders more per year. So that's orders, not dollars. The guy who wrote the case study, he breaks it down in a lot of detail about what they did, the data they have behind it. And I guess that's kind of the point behind that, is just to say, whenever you're looking at any checkout customizations, you really do need to have that data-driven approach. A lot of the time, clients are coming to you with these grandiose ideas of what they want because they think it'll help, but they don't really have the numbers to back it up. So as partners, I think part of our responsibility is to try and push back wherever possible and be like, are you sure? Because Shopify spent a lot of time building this checkout. They've seen a lot more checkouts in their lifetime than you've ever seen. So, they've got some data behind it. So that's just that link, helpful, solves a lot of arguments. So to talk a little bit more about something concrete, I'm going to run a quick demo video of a checkout flow that we built for a customer. So this is YouFoods, and this is actually the theme design and stuff like that. It's all done by the wonderful people at the Working Party, so props to them. So I'll just step you through what's going on. I mean, this is pretty obvious. They're a prepackaged meal company. So we're just going to put something into our cart and then go through the checkout process. I'm going to have to step over here a little bit. But you'll see from the cart on the sidebar, we have this opportunity to collect a little bit of extra information before we go into the checkout process. So people can do this before they put their order to check that you are actually in their delivery zone. People can pre-select what day they're going to want their order. And then when they move through the checkout, you can see this is where our customization starts. So we've gotten rid of most of the address fields because we have an autocomplete that we want to populate. You can see we've pre-populated it with where we know where they are in advance. So they're going to chuck in their name, and then as soon as they start typing their address, you get the autocomplete functionality. If we've got a fallback, can't find your address in case the autocomplete doesn't work. This was put in to solve a problem. They were having a lot of issues with people typing in random crap that just didn't exist in the AusPost database. So this has helped a lot get the packages to where they need to go. next bit of customization, picking an address type based on where they are. Based on the type of address, we require some extra information, so business name or something like that. Chucking in an extra delivery note. So that's treated differently than the standard order note that you might get on a checkout. Moving on to the shipping stage, this is another bit of customization. So we actually have a custom app that's providing, based on the address, this is the delivery zone, these are the available days for delivery. They can check and customize that. They go through the payment. You're not going to see my credit card details. I'm very careful about that. There we go. And the reason I want to go through the checkout is because post-checkout we have a final bit of checkout customization, which the folks at the Working Party implemented, which I think is pretty rare to see the thank you page customized as well as it has been here. It's really quite unique. Hold your breath. Yeah. So this is their order confirmation page. So you guys would have seen the standard Shopify order confirmation page. That looks quite a bit nicer. You get a lot more options in terms of what you display on the page. They can push campaigns like refer a friend and that sort of stuff from there in a way that fits in with their branding and their styling. So that's an example of some of the sort of stuff you can do with the custom checkouts. I'm just going to talk quickly about some of the techniques that we use to build that. This is, I guess, the more technical part of the talk. There'll be code on the screen. Feel free to tune out. And again, like Jason, if you want to talk details, then catch me afterwards, and I'll be happy to talk to you. So the first component of checkout customizations is getting access to this checkout.liquid. It's a layout like theme.liquid. Again, you need to get that activated on a Shopify Plus store by talking to the merchant success manager for that Plus client. They'll walk you through the, are you sure you know what you're doing? You will say, yes, I saw the talk, and you go into that. It's a pretty standard HTML template. Probably the most important thing to note about it that is different, or that is that from a regular theme, is that each step of the checkout, you don't get access to directly to the liquid that generates the HTML for those steps. So it's just basically a layout file. You can add custom CSS, you can add custom JavaScript, you can add snippets and things like that, depending on different steps, but you can't change the actual, the HTML that is rendering, say, the address field or something like that. And talking about what you do to address that, you need to use JavaScript. So all of the HTML changes that you might need to make to a page need to be driven through JavaScript to help. So it gets a bit painful writing HTML in JavaScript a lot of the time. So we use this technique, which is basically we have a snippet that has all of our templates in it for all the HTML we might want to render. We capture that into a liquid variable. So we can write our HTML as normal. We can use the translation, so merchants are able to use their language file to customize the text that's displayed. And then once we've captured that into a liquid variable, when we're starting our JavaScripts, we set up a variable with all our templates. We pass the liquid variable there, and if you pass that to the JSON filter, it escapes all the HTML. So you can edit all your HTML like you would normal liquid, and then render it in JavaScript when you need to. I think that's all I had. Yeah. The next thing to be aware of in a checkout is that it's not a standard render a page once and you're done sort of thing. There are lots of little bits and pieces that load at different times. So classic example, I don't know how easy this is going to be for you guys to see, but the shipping page loads, or the shipping step loads, but then it makes a call out to the Shopify API to get the real-time carrier rates. So the page loads, and then you're waiting a little while for the shipping rates to come back. So if, in our UFO's example, you rely on those shipping rates to then render our delivery days and what zone we're delivering to and that sort of stuff, you need to wait for that to come back. So that's a pretty common gotcha when people start editing the checkout, is not being prepared to wait for these events. And another issue is because Shopify will load different sections at different times and move between steps without necessarily having a full page load event. Most of your JavaScript for the checkout needs to sort of be in it'll be in the one file anyway, but it needs to be loaded at the same time with the themes, the theme layout. So to get around that sort of issues, we use these two patterns. One being a module pattern. I mean, this is pretty common if you're writing, I guess, maintainable JavaScript. But we have a set of modules, one for each specific function we build on the checkout. Some of them are used on every step of the checkout. Some of them are only used on one. So, for example, the address autocomplete module only used on the customer information step. Each module defines this is the step that I am needed for. It also defines which element it attaches to. And then in combination with this JavaScript, so instead of listening to the document load event or something like that, we'd listen for page load or page change. So Shopify will trigger that anytime the page content changes, so whether shipping rates just loaded or whether someone applied a discount code or something like that, someone moved to a next step, that'll get triggered. Each module then looks to see, should I be initialized at this step? If so, then I should initialize myself. If not, do nothing. And there's a check there to make sure that it doesn't initialize itself twice, so you don't accidentally render two sets of fields, or you don't execute code that you don't really need to. Then the very final thing that I wanted to talk about with the checkout was around cart attributes. So all of the custom data that we collect in that checkout flow get stored as cart attributes, which you might be familiar with from non-checkout stuff. So you can change them in the regular Shopify theme. So they all come through here. As you can see, shipping method, delivery type, and all that sort of stuff. So there's two things to note with the attributes in the checkout. The first one is that you can edit them using an AJAX call. So we don't use that in the UFoods checkout, but potentially if you had information that was tedious or you wanted someone to write a long message, you probably don't want to get them to do that in the checkout, but if you did, when they're halfway through, you can use an AJAX call to save that attribute so that if they refresh the page or they go back and come forward, you don't lose that information. So that's quite useful. And then the other thing to note is that anytime you're setting cart attributes, if you set one attribute and not all the others, everything else gets lost. So it's really important that, for example, if you set attributes at the customer information step, that when you're on the delivery method step, that you at least render a hidden input that has the value from the previous step, so that when you click the button to go to the next step, it still saves that attribute and you don't lose it, which causes us to tear our hair out for a while. So that's the very quick breakdown on checkout customization. Like I said, if you've got any questions, please, we'll have the Q&A at the end, but if you want to get into the code and that sort of stuff, then happy to talk at the end. Cheers, thanks very much.